wanted to introduce Ron Schweiger, who I've known for how many years, Ron?
Never mind how long.
Ron is the Brooklyn historian. He is the official historian of the borough of Brooklyn. Has been for many years now. And he's also a great friend of Hadassah. He's spoken to many of our chapters at many different events, and he's always really interesting and always tells us things we didn't know. But he knows everything. So please come up here, Ron.
Books were written many years ago to document history. Well, one of these books I have here is called The History of Brooklyn Jewry. It was published in 1937. And the history of the East Midwood Jewish Center is in here. The history of Temple of Beth Emeth is in here. The history of the Jewish hospitals that were formed at the turn of the century in here. Hadassah is in here. Not as extensive as the book that I saw on the table over here. The Jewish hospitals. The Jewish hospital was an outgrowth of the Brooklyn Hebrew Hospital Society, which was organized in 1896. By 1901, Miss Holly Marks was in charge of the dispensary as a registrar. Miss Jenny Diamond and Miss Bertha Fredericks were the pharmacists there. On December 30th, 1901, the Brooklyn Hebrew Hospital Society turned over its funds and dispensary to a new organization. Mr. Abraham, from Abraham and Strauss, became one of the new members. Mr. Abraham said that he would contribute $10,000 if $90,000 was raised within 1 year from April 1st, 1902. A charity fair was held in the Brooklyn Academy of Music on Montague Street. Now, I know you know the Brooklyn Academy of Music is not on Montague Street, but that's where the original Brooklyn Academy of Music was. It burned down in 1903, and the new one was built where it is today on Lafayette Avenue, right off Flatbush Avenue. The fair raised $31,000. Other fairs were held to raise more money. Some of the organizations that participated were the Women's Auxiliary of the Jewish Hospital. Mrs. Henry Roth was the president. Her husband was the treasurer. The Ladies Benevolent Hebrew Society of the Eastern District in Brooklyn. The Ladies Hebrew Benevolent Society of Temple Israel. The Daughters of Israel, and several other women's organizations as well. The Women's Auxiliary of the Jewish Hospital, Mrs. Nathan Strauss, was president for 5 years, from 1928 to 1932. Mrs. Henry Roth was the first president there. One of the women that was appointed to draft the Constitution was Mrs. A.J. Nam. Does the name Nam sound familiar? Nam's Department Store on Fulton Street, a competitor to Abraham and Strauss, all right? What I'm holding in my hand just was given to me recently. It's upside down. To give you the involvement of the Nam family. Now, Mrs. Nam was the treasurer for the Women's Auxiliary of the Jewish Hospital. This was presented to Mr. Benjamin H. Nam on the anniversary of the cornerstone laying of the congregation B'nai Shalom on 9th Street Temple in Brooklyn, New York, October 19th, 1913. So this is how history is passed down. Okay? While the Jewish hospital developed into a top institution, it failed in one important manner. The Orthodox Jew. The Orthodox were disappointed because the Jewish hospital did not have a kosher kitchen. The Orthodox proceeded to organize the Beth Moses Hospital, the Beth El Hospital, which became Brookdale, and the Israel Zion Hospital, which became Maimonides. That's where I was born in 1945. Beth Moses Hospital. The cornerstone was laid on October 27th, 1918, less than a month before the armistice was signed ending World War I. The hospital opened on November 4th, 1921 at a cost of $500,000. A lot of money raised in those days. The Women's Auxiliary started in 1914 there to raise money so that it can be developed and opened by 1921. Another important organization at Beth Moses was the Women's Maternity. When the hospital opened, the Women's Maternity donated linens valued at over $5,000. Beth Moses was organized to help train physicians as well. The Israel Zion Hospital, Maimonides. Israel Zion was opened in Borough Park on September 17, 1922, at 10th Avenue between 48th and 49th Street. Rabbi Samuel Levinson and his congregation from Temple Beth Emeth of Flatbush were invited to the cornerstone laying in 1918. Now that information is in the minutes I found from Temple Beth Emeth, and I'm sure many other congregations and rabbis were invited to that cornerstone laying for the Israel Zion Hospital. Helping to raise funds for the hospital were the Ladies' Auxiliaries of the United Israel Hospital of Bensonhurst, the Ladies' Auxiliary of Borough Park, and the Mapleton branch as well. The hospital increased its number of beds from 183 in 1922 to over 460 in 1936. The Beth El Hospital, Brookdale. The original name was not Beth El. It was the Brownsville and East New York Hospital. The Women's Auxiliary raised large amounts of money by hosting annual luncheons and card parties. At an annual affair held at the St. George Hotel in Brooklyn Heights, it was directed by Mrs. Samuel Sperling, raising thousands of money for the Beth El Hospital. The Women's Hospital. It was located at 1395 Eastern Parkway. You can see how these hospitals are now being scattered in all different neighborhoods of Brooklyn. It was located there in 1918. The organizing women started the Maternity Aid Society. It was the only hospital in Brooklyn specifically for women and children. Specifically for women and children. The organization consisted of over 400 women. Women from various Brooklyn communities assisted the hospital, including a group from Flatbush. Food was donated by several women, and the plumbing was done for free by Mr. Harry Voletsky, whose wife was one of the vice presidents. She probably twisted his arm. The Brooklyn Hebrew Home for the Aged. An affair was held at the Prospect Hall. How many of you know the Prospect Hall? Okay? That was actually built in the 1800s as a German opera hall. Yes, really. Okay? An affair was held at the Prospect Hall for the Brooklyn Jewish Home for the Aged on January 4th, 1908. With other affairs and fundraisers, large amounts of money was raised as interest in the Home for the Aged became of interest to women all over Brooklyn. By 1936, it was the largest organization of its kind in the world. The building was completed in Bushwick at Howard and Dumont Avenues in 1913. One of its directors was a woman named Hannah Hirsch. Hannah helped to establish the Department of Social Services at the Kings County Hospital. She was one of the founders of Temple Beth Emeth of Flatbush in 1911 and served as its president of the sisterhood. All I can say is that where would we be if it weren't for the determination, diligence, and aggressiveness of women? Thank you all very much.